Okay, Ramesh, you are live on the air. Go ahead with your question, sir.
Yeah. Hi, Rabbi. Thank you so much for taking my call. And my question is that why Paul was persecuting Christian members rather than the Christian leaders. Like nowadays, they take out the leaders first, then the members. He should have taken that first. Maybe he should have persecuted all the leaders than the members. That would have been easy for him to stop the Christianity growing.
That's interesting.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. I think about that a lot. Thank you for your
Go
question.
ahead and hang up now, Antonio, if you guys are. Thank you.
I thought about that often, and I am not convinced that Paul persecuted Christians. I think that's exaggerated by both Paul and the book of Acts, which is regurgitating Paul's claim to have persecuted Christians much more elaborately. And actually, Paul, in Acts' view, partook in the murder of Stephen. Paul was a murderer of an innocent fellow. Why would you kill somebody? But I think that Paul exaggerated his persecution of Christians for his own purpose. And like, why would a high priest in Jerusalem send somebody to Damascus to crush a Christian movement? And if Paul was a Pharisee, why would he care what his Sadducee high priest had to say? And what authority did a high priest in Jerusalem have over Christians in Syria? It just, all of it is just complete nonsense. Now, that said, so I think you're asking a question about Bugs Bunny. You're like ghost hunting. But that said, Paul was very much just a disagreeable figure. So what is certainly what occurred here is this: Paul just disagreed with anyone and everyone. And we could see that spot on. We can easily observe that spectacle in the Christian Bible itself. Paul just did not play with other people. He got along well with female companions because women were very unlikely to give their own opinion or to argue with them. He got along well with them. But like, think about Barnabas. I mean, Barnabas was the person who introduces Paul to the Jerusalem church. Why does he have a falling out with him? Or his cousin, John Mark. And Paul can't get along with anyone. He's fighting. So I'm sure you know somebody like this, right? You have this uncle, whatever, who whenever he showed up to a Thanksgiving dinner, he like just disagrees with her. Oh, there goes Uncle Joe, God only knows what he's going to say. There are people like this. You've met these people who are just very disagreeable. People don't want to hang around with them. And that was very much Paul. I mean, Paul admits this in Galatians. He says that, in fact, he thought that Peter was a hypocrite, and he wasn't afraid to tell that to Peter to his face in Antioch. Wow. How did that make it into the Christian Bible? Why would Paul make that up? Like, why would he invent that? And he accused Peter. Think of the accusation. The accusation he had against Peter was that Peter behaved differently when he was around Jews who were Christians and Gentiles who were Christians. Meaning he accused Peter, now listen very carefully, he accused Peter of being chameleon. Where have we heard that before? Well, as it turns out, Paul said that he behaves chameleon. To the Jew, I become as a Jew. See 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 20. To those who are under law, I can become as someone who's under law, that I may gain those who are under law. To those who are not under law, I become as one who's not under law, that I may gain those who are not under law. I can become all things to all men, that I may gain them. Well, there you go. So Paul was just highly adversarial. Paul exclaims in the book of Galatians, this is really important to understand why it's significant when we talk about Galatians 1 and 2. Because in those first two chapters, Paul is essentially laying out for the churches that he established in Galatia, meaning in modern-day Turkey and Asia Minor, why he has credibility and why they should listen to him rather than others who've influenced them. So it's very important to view Galatians 1 and 2 with the same way we would view Philippians 3 as an example. It's Paul's CV. And Paul says that says, I didn't, what I got, I didn't get from Jerusalem. I didn't have to consult the so-called pillars of the church. I didn't have to consult anyone. The revelation, I went to Arabia rather than Jerusalem. Why does he need to tell us this? Because I spent a couple of weeks in Jerusalem. That was it. And I met, James and the brother of Jesus, but I didn't get anything from them. Everything I have is direct from Jesus Christ. Well, that's very significant. So Paul, we could see from his own words, and this is something that you can bank on. There's not much in the New Testament that you could be sure of that it's historical, but the one thing you can be certain of, because Paul wrote so much, he was such a prolific writer, is that he really couldn't get along with anyone he fought with. And who were the people that he battled? His own people. So he was a fighter. He was just one of these people very hard to get along with. But Paul, in his effort to gain credibility among Christians, to influence this young religion, would say, I used to be on that side. I used to be a hostile witness, and now I've changed my mind. But I don't believe that Paul was going out and persecuting Christians, whether they're leaders or lay. I don't believe any of that at all. I think Paul made it very unpleasant for other Christians in this very early stage of the Christian religion. And ultimately, Paul wins, and meaning his Christology is adopted by the church, and the Christology of his opponents, who would have been what we think were like Ebionites and Nazarenes. When we say we think, the reason I modify my statement that way is because the writings of these early Christian sects that were adversarial, that opposed Paul, that believed that you had to keep Torah, that didn't believe Jesus was God, that believed you had to keep the mitzvot, that considered Paul a liar, their writings did not survive. The thing we know about them, and why we know about them, because the writings of their opponents survive. So it's important to bear that in mind. But there could be no question that Paul exaggerated how much he opposed Christianity in his earlier stage, because that would only give him more street cred when he's writing his letters, and all of them were written during the 50s. So that's a really great question. Thank you. If you enjoyed this program, please like and subscribe.
אדון עולם אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא ואת נעשה בחפצו כל